would make it a bit more of a small issue. But we have our masks with us. Usikose kuvaa mask.
Of course, there's also the social distance element of it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe I know you. Maybe for our viewers, you can maybe say, who is Ken?
Thank you, Chege. My name is Kennedy Odhiambo Otina. I work at the African Women's Development and Communication Network, which is also known as FEMNET, as the advocacy officer in charge of working with men and boys. My role in this organization is to work with men across the continent in undertaking advocacy, but beyond that, then we do also work across the globe at the UN level, which is, global platforms and so on and so forth. But we also work a lot at national level, where we work with communities in Kenya and across different parts of the country.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe just a little bit, apart from the advocacy work and the work you've mentioned, does Ken do anything else? Like
Ken, well, Ken is also, interestingly, not so many people know the side of me that I'm also a musician. I do compose music. I've recorded music with other people, but that's something that I used to do when I was in high school. So it's something that, apart from, the usual work, I like music. And I'm also a photography enthusiast. It's only that, time sometimes, we may not have all the time, but apart from, the work that we do, photography is another thing that I like so much.
Thank you. I think you've taken a few photos of me and they are really good. Uko Kericho kwa majani chai. Yeah, so thank you so much. So there's the work part, but Ken is also just like any other person like us. So if you have any questions as we proceed with our topic for today, Mwanaume Smart, you can always type them on our inbox. So maybe before we unpack the topic of who Mwanaume Smart is, I think that is where we should start. Mbona Mwanaume Smart, or Mwanaume Smart ni nani, so that we get into the discussion, people may get the grip of it.
Mwanaume Smart can be defined in many ways, but a lot of times when we talk about being smart, people will be looking at being clean, being neat in terms of your clothing and so on and so forth. Others will be talking about smartness in terms of education and your capabilities in as far as education is concerned. But there's also the smartness of being able to cope and live in the realities of present day life, which means that a Mwanaume Smart is a Mwanaume who is responsive and responsible, and also is emotional and is able to engage with fellow men and women in ways that are not violating in any other person's rights. And being smart means that if you come by any situation that may bring about acts of gender-based violence or violence against women, you should be able to stand out and say that, no, let's stop violence against women. Because when we talk about smartness, the general smartness that people perceive, you come by people who are smartly dressed but are rapists. We come by people who are smartly dressed but they deprive their families of their livelihoods, and not because they don't have, but because they want to behave in a particular way, which is not smart. Yeah. So being smart does not necessarily mean that you must be clean. Cleanliness is good; it's being smart, yes. But there are other aspects of being a smart, a Mwanaume Smart, and Mwanaume Smart is that responsible man, a man who is sensitive to the rights of other people, a man who is not violent, a man who is able to promote the rights of other people, and that then crowns the fact that Mwanaume Smart. Yeah. And they are available anyway.
And they are available. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. So Mwanaume Smart is not all about. It goes beyond being clean, labda kuvaa tai. Yeah. So it's ni ule mwanaume, if I can also mix with Swahili, it's ni ule mwanaume mwenye number one, and I recognize kwamba even women and girls have rights. Yeah. Na ni mtu ambaye anasimamia na kutetea na kuhakikisha kwamba analinda zile rights zao. That's so fine. And na umesema even right now as you are speaking, kwanza unapelekanaje na corona na kukua Mwanaume Smart?
Corona imetuonyesha mambo. Sorry, na kuwa Mwanaume Smart na hii enzi ya corona inamaanisha lazima ukae home, na kukaa home saa zingine wanaume wengine hawezi kaa home. Unasikia wanaume wanafikiria ati kukaa home we ni kabati. na kukaa home ati ni lazima uchape wife, lakini kukaa home inamaanisha lazima uchukue ile jukumu kama baba, kama mwanaume nyumbani, na uhakikishe kuwa kila mtu katika nyumba yako ako katika ile hali mazingara ambayo yako na amani na haki zao pia zinazingatiwa, kwa sababu tumesikia sana katika enzi hii ya corona kuwa kuna wanaume wengi wanachapa wanawake manyumbani. Tunasikia kuna wasichana wengi wanakeketwa, na wanakeketwa wanaume wakiwa kule. So ukiwa smart, kwanza wacha vita nyumbani na hakikisha kuwa kuna tabia zile desturi na mila itikadi ambazo zinafanya haki za kina mama zinadhulumiwa. Kwa hivyo kuwa smart katika enzi ya corona ni kuwa kaa nyumbani na hakikisha kuwa haki za kina mama na wanawake na watoto pia zinatiliwa maanani.
Thank you very much. So unaweza kuwa smart pia wakati wa corona, the way Ken said, na umesema kitu nikasikia kucheka, lakini sijui kama ilikuwa nicheke. Kukaa home tu imaanishi wewe ni kabati. Yeah, you can be able to engage and ensure that you're also protecting your families. Na hiyo inaniletea kwa kitu moja, sababu probably the way we understand our cultures, zile mila zetu na desturi, na sasa hizi maneno imebadilika, corona ako around pia. So in as much as we are doing this, it's when we are learning, probably having spent more than 8 hours together after a long period of time, it's happening now. There are some things that are coming into play. Now when we are having these discussions, tumesikia watu wakiongea about masculinities. Probably if I can explain a bit about masculinities and how they come to play, especially during this COVID period.
Masculinity is a very interesting concept. Masculinities is about the way men want to see themselves and the way they want to be treated. A lot of times when you go to communities, you hear of men talking about treat me like a man, handle me like a man, talk to me like a man, niongeleshe kama mwanaume. That idea of niongeleshe kama mwanaume is already a masculinity issue, in that there's a way they want to be perceived, and anybody or anytime they are perceived different, they begin to look at ile ume wao ni kama imepungua. Sasa utapata there's a challenge with this sometimes, because when you talk about masculinities, it's like a gangster mentality. It's a gang kind of thinking that sisi kama wanaume hatuwezi chapwa. So hata kama tuko na tatizo fulani ama tuko na shida fulani, hatuwezi zungumuza kwa sababu wewe ni mwanaume mgani unachapwa na uzungumuzi, ama wewe ni mwanaume mgani mwanamke hawezi kupatiana mawaidha kwako kwa sababu unafikiria wanawake hawafai kuongea mali wanaume wako. Kwa hivyo sasa inafanya cases za gender based violence or domestic violence ama violence against women katika nyumbani zinazidi, kwa sababu watu wanataka kujifanya au ni wanaume, lakini katika ile hali kuna upungufu fulani. Ndipo sasa tunasema mwanaume smart ni mwanaume ambaye ana mawazo ambayo yamezidi kuwa na mambo ya kidhulma za kijinsia na mambo kama hayo. Kwa hivyo masculinities, it depends on the angle it has taken, because if it's about progressive masculinity, positive masculinity, then it's something that is a welcome. For instance, if you are part of a movement that is progressive, that is working towards ending all forms of violence against women in the country, then you are that is positive masculinity. But if you are in this masculinity ideology where you only come together as men to go and drink and then come back home to violate women, then you are not in the right masculinity agenda. So we need to define which side do we want to fall in. And a lot of times, because of the fear that you don't want to remain alone, or because you want, you think that utaulizo we ni mwanaume mgani, then people behave in a way that is wrong, is not right. But then you realize that it's as a result of influence from other friends or peers. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I think I get it, and I understand that masculinities, there are two sides. So somebody needs to choose whether he's on the positive or on the negative. And also some of these things may have been fed to us. For example, during our trainings we talk about issues of gender, the way men should be. So unaulizwa wewe mwanaume wa aina gani unaingia nyumbani saa 10 and stuff like that. So it's for somebody, kuna zile mzuri that fight and support for the rights of women. Thank you very much. Now that we've been talking about Mwanaume Smart and the issues of COVID, and we've been able to establish who Mwanaume Smart is, probably in your own experience, and the way you engage with men at all levels. What are the most common types of abuse that we are seeing right now?
Well, when we talk about gender-based violence, we are talking about any act that is likely to result into harm or results into harm, and it can be in terms of, it can be in different forms. One form is physical. When we talk of physical, we talk about the general battery fights. We also have those that are sexual in nature, which are things like rape, defilement, and so on and so forth. We also have psychosocial forms of violence. And when we talk of psychosocial, these are the abuses. When you talk to women, you talk to them in an abusive manner. We also have the socio-cultural, which we are talking about things like child marriage, things like female genital mutilation, things like fish for sex in certain cultures. And there's the new aspect of it, which is more of the social media kind of dimensions, which comes with a leaking of intimate pictures and events between intimate partners. These are all different forms of violence. But then within these forms, when we talk of physical, we have quite a number of other acts of violence. It can be physical beating, it can be punching, it can be maiming. We know of people who've even slashed other people's limbs. When we talk of sexual, we have defilement, which means that somebody is engaging in illicit sex. Defilement is not sex; it's just abuse. It's just abuse. We cannot categorize it as sex, but because of the classification, then it falls there. So this is when somebody engages in illicit sex with a minor. A minor is anybody below 18 years. Then we have rape also, which is about engaging in sex with an adult without their consent. But then we also have what we call this incest. Incest is also very common. So when we talk about cases of gender-based violence during the COVID period, all of these have been manifested themselves. And we cannot say that, this one aspect is larger than the other. They are all not right.
They are all not right. Yeah. Thank you very much. And in our small discussions around uko tu mtaani, the line that men think now, this is physical violence or this is not. Somebody would think lazima kwa mfano amchape. And somebody was like, saa ingine akiniletea maneno mimi, nilikuwa nimekasirika. Lakini anasema sikumchapa. Lakini nilimshika nikamtingisha. Unajua ile kutingizwa mpaka unaweza sikia kidney zikirukaruka. Kamtingiza nikamsukuma kwa ukuta, lakini sikumchapa. What can you say about such a statement?
Violence. In fact, violence does not start with the killing. It starts with the abuse. It starts with a push. It grows into a punch. And then the next day you will pick a stool and hit somebody. Yeah. And before you realize if that is not stopped, then you take panga, chop off the limbs. So by that time then you are realizing that it was not my intention. Sikuwa nataka kumuumiza hivi. It's the same justification that somebody is saying, nilimsukuma tu ama nilikuwa namtingiza tu ndio nijaribu kuingiza sense into her. And it's not right. Because once you've not stopped it from that point, then it graduates.
Then it actually graduates.
Yeah, into a bigger act of violence, and which eventually leads to death. So violence must be stopped from the source. Sazile inaanza. Yeah, if you don't stop it at that point, then there's a risk of it going into a very serious case.
Thank you very much. And you've said something about sexual abuse, and you've spoken about, you've mentioned something about consent. And I was thinking at this moment, because of the issues and the stories we're also getting at GBRC, probably if you can unpack consent kidogo, but I don't know. I hope hakuna watoto na watch saizi. Maybe kama wako unaweza watuma wafanye shughuli kidogo, but we need to unpack the issue of consent at this particular moment. Because we are getting discussions, we are hearing stories, maybe people do not know exactly consent ni nini.
Consent is very important. Consent is about kukubaliana. You come to a common agreement that it has reached a time when we can be intimate because you have probably a relationship or you are in a relationship. Yeah, and that consent does not necessarily mean that you're asking for consent from a stranger. It's consent including from your wife. And a lot of times,
repeat
consent from your wife. A lot of men think that, you know, if you are married, you just need to go and jump into the sexual activity.
Imagine it's COVID, you are home most of the time. There was no football until maybe recently.
Yes.
So you are saying even from the wife, you need to...
Lazima msikizane. You must begin to talk about it. It cannot be that sex is in terms and conditions of the men, because I know that's a masculinity issue, because sometimes we are socialized to think that it's us to decide when we are going to have sex and how we are going to have sex. But you can imagine how sex is pleasurable when both of you have consented that, you know, yes, it is. We need to have this sexual moment, intimate moment, and a lot of times men don't seem to understand where the boundary between you know, rape in marriage and consent is, and you know, a lot of times we are told that, you know, you need to prepare the woman into intimacy way in advance, or you cannot be somebody who is fighting your wife and expect to get, you know, pleasurable moments, intimate moments. Definitely that is not going to work, regardless of where you got the wife. Yeah, you must get into a process together if you are to enjoy this intimacy. So consent is about kukubaliana, kuelewana, kuwa katika ile hali pamoja. Because there are times when you could be in the mood of having sex, and your wife doesn't have, is not in that mood. And so how do you come into a common position? And sometimes it's because of maybe you didn't prepare her. But if you can discuss with her, you can bridge that gap and you eventually enjoy sex together.
Thank you very much. So consent is very important. Now, like we are saying, mwanaume smart, lazima ulize ruhusa na wakue na makubaliano. Hey, thank you very much.
Anything that is not consensual is rape.
Anything that is not consensual is rape.
Yeah.
Kwa hivyo in this COVID time, if you have forced your partner to be intimate with you, na amekunyima ruhusa na umemlazimisha, then what Ken is saying is you have committed rape. Right?
Yeah. And I know so many people have done that. Yeah. So come try it again. Can you try seeking consent from her and see how that moment is going to be pleasurable? Try it today.
Thank you. So you see, so it's a very fine line on even how our behaviors as men is actually bordering.
Ati sisi tunaambiwa sisi enda ugrab. It's never like that.
Never like that. Na mwanaume smart halazimishi mtu. Yeah, thank you very much. So I hope when we are getting this awareness, you take a moment, do a self-evaluation. Have you forced somebody when they did not want? And what we are saying today is, even in these difficult periods, with a lot of time at home, if you force somebody, then you are raping somebody. Yeah, thank you. Wacha tusonge mbele kidogo. That was very interesting. Yeah, always a pleasure listening to you. Now, for example, somebody was talking about, when you talk about issues of male engagement, na watoto vijana, somebody was trying to explain, as we were preparing for this show, wanted me to ask you specifically this question. Having worked with men for a long time, and also being a strong voice and authority in issues of male engagement in Kenya and beyond, would you say that the environment that especially the boy child grows, if it's a violent one, penye mama upigwa, ukeleleshwa, anamwagiliwa maji, is it likely that this will have will affect him in terms of his behavior when he becomes a grown-up?
You know, nobody's born violent. Yeah. One thing that we must always remember is that all of us acquire these violent traits. And we learn, we copy, we imitate, and then we adopt. So if you are in an environment where violence is the mode of operation, if you didn't see your father engage with your mother in a very constructive dialogue, definitely when you grow up, that is what you acquire, that, you know, wanawake si watu wa kuongelesha, unaongea mingi na wanawake kwa nini? So as you grow up, you will be violent. You know, violence begets violence, and you know, it is transmitted from one generation to the other based on the environment where you operate in. So if your father was violent, if you are living in a family that is violent, definitely you will carry on with the behavior and traits. So your generation will also be violent. So it takes a lot of effort for you to begin to think about, you know, why do I continue perpetuating all these forms of violence.
The forms of violence. Yeah, because clearly it has an effect on children.
Of course, very heavy effect, a very heavy effect on children. And you see, the boy will always want to learn from the father. And and because of the prevalence of violence in communities where we come from, you find that when they come together as boys, they still learn and from each other that, you know, kwetu sisi mama yangu anapigangwa. If you want to know how families are, how violent families are, talk to nursery school kids. They will tell you, baba alichapa mama jana. Yeah. And so they learn and they kind of adopt and acquire that behavior that, you know, it's very normal to be violent. And you know, if it's prevalent, then if I mention that my mother was beaten yesterday, the other one will also talk about her mother was beaten yesterday. So it's like a normal thing. Because statistically, according to the UN, it's indicating that 1 out of 3 women are facing violence. And it could be even more severe in different communities. So it's a very common thing, but it's a very bad upbringing.
It's a very bad upbringing. And that could also translate to the girl child who will grow up knowing that it's okay sometimes to be, if they grow up in such an environment, then...
Yeah, for them, they will grow up having that belief that, you know, it's normal to be beaten. My mother was beaten. And if you listen to people talk about issues of violence, they will always encourage couples who are facing violence to remain in that violent relationship. Hata mama yako alipigwa, hata nyanya yako alipigwa, hakutoroka, hakutoka, hakuachana na ndoa. Nobody, a lot of times you find that there are not so many people who will be having the courage to tell them that, no, step out of that marriage. Because anytime you are being violated, there's a danger, you are likely going to die. So when a girl acquires that belief that, you know, violence is the normal way of solving disputes or addressing issues, then it becomes a normal thing. So if she's beaten, she takes it as, you know, a normal thing. And you will be wondering, why did it take you so long to come out of this violent relationship? And at that time, utapata amekatwa mikono. Yet alisukumwa siku ya kwanza.
I see. So yeah, I think that kind of upbringing affects children even in terms of them tolerating, tolerating violence even in future. And like you put it, I think it's very true that people understand, because here at GVRC we deal with such cases, and like you've clearly put it, it starts slowly but keeps graduating. So if a man is violent and a woman is also, let's say the lady or the woman is also tolerating it in terms of what the society expects, then it keeps getting worse and worse. And we've seen cases here, like people have lost their limbs. People have come with knives on their, you know, in their head. Some people have, you know, people have been murdered like outrightly. So I think you may die slowly.
You may die, and there's no amount of prayer that will stop violence. Please walk out of a violent relationship. Hakuna hata uombe aina gani, it will not stop. The only way to stop violence is stopping it from the source. Get out of a violent relationship. And I don't remember in any of those wedding vows when a pastor or a religious person said, now you can hit the bride. There's always, you can kiss the bride. You can kiss. Yeah, so if you come up with you can hit the bride, that is not biblical. It's not anywhere in the religious doctrine. So where are you getting this hit the bride? Yeah. So there's no church that should condone violence. And you should also know that there's no prayer. If there was prayer that was related to violence, probably at that time of your wedding is when the pastor could have said, now we pray that you are going to be violent in this relationship, and when it happens, continue praying. That has never happened. No.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that you need to know where violence can lead to. We've seen people who've become disabled, people who've lost their lives, and we know, like you're saying, make the decision right now. That one ungojei maombi. But you're not saying you'll not go to heaven, you'll still go to heaven. The only problem is you might go there earlier if you continue keeping quiet, because we know the next thing might be your own death. Yeah, so thank you very much about that. And as we continue, somebody wanted to know if when you're talking about issues of men, do men also suffer violence? Can men be abused?
Yes.
Or is not happening here in Kenya?
Men can be abused. Men also suffer violence. But you see, the kind of violence they are suffering is not necessarily gendered. When we talk about gender-based violence, we are talking about the prevalence rate. You realize that women are more violated than men and boys. And in most of these situations of violence against women, it's a systematic and structural environment that supports or perpetuates this violence. If you talk about education, if you talk about walking the streets of Nairobi, it will be more difficult for a man to come out of the house and check on his clothes and compared to a woman who will be looking at, nikipita pale ile stage ya pale nitavuliwa nguo. So that's a systematic issue. So when you talk about violence against women, you realize that that men face, you realize that there's a lot of safeguards that have been put to protect men from violence, to the extent that if you come out and say that you are violated, then it's like, ilikuwa aje, haiwezekani. In fact, even the systems that we have in Kenya, nobody is prepared for a man who is violated. You go to the police station and then you talk about nilipigwa, bana. You've heard of cases of senior politicians who reported violence, and it became a joke. It became a joke. So it's like even your clansmen will be wondering, Chege, tukuje tukusaidie kunguta huyu. You know, like, And so if it happens to a woman, the situation is different. So yes, men face violence, but then the challenge is they are not as many as compared to women, because even throughout my career, it's now 14 years plus, I've only come by three men who've come out and said, I'm facing violence, and honestly, I'm facing violence. But you see, we didn't have what to do, even though right now there's a lot of protection that is in place, because the laws that exist are not biased towards men. The laws are supposed to cater for both men and women. So if you are facing violence, it's important for you to come out and report. And if you report, depending on the prevalence, then even systems can be put in place to support response. But as at now, men are still very few. But in fact, if you are facing violence, please come out and speak about it. I know there's also the National GBV hotline, which you can use to report violence. But we also have men who are progressive who can support you, because a lot of times if men report violence, wataambiwa na wenzao, the masculinities, that enda chapa huyu mwanamke. In fact, enda nunua rungu. Alikugonga, enda nunua rungu. And that is a wrong advice.
Yeah, that's a very wrong advice. Yeah, violence begetting more violence. Yeah, and I think what you've said is true. There are men, there's nothing wrong with a man coming out.
There's nothing wrong with a man.
Since the onset of COVID in Kenya in March, at GVRC, believe it or not, we've seen over 60 men.
Over 60 men.
Yes, who've come out, even despite the issue of COVID. So it's true, even as we are talking about this, that we know and we also understand that the places are there, like you said, and we'll make sure we give you how men can also reach out to other people.
And you see, the severity is even getting worse. I've seen a number of cases on TV that they are actually leading to death. Most of them are leading to death. And it's the same thing that happens with women. But then for them, they take a little longer to get into the situation of death. But there's no justification for violence anyway.
True. Thank you very much. And then now, as we talk about this, how can men feel included? You know, the discussions that we do have, the discussion that I'm going out there is always about children, about women, about girls. So how can men feel included? So that we know the issue of violence near to what, like how can we fit in? How can we fit in this discussion? How can we fit in this space?
One thing that I want to clarify, Chege, and I know most people want to think that, you know, any efforts towards empowering women is a disempowerment of women. No, that's not the truth. Yeah. The truth is that the reality is women have been left behind for many years and they suffer more violence compared to men. And so there's a deliberate effort towards changing the situation. That doesn't mean that men cannot come out and join progressive forces. The era of, you know, the Mwanaume, the breadwinner, you know, the most intelligent, the most powerful is gone. We now need to begin to think about how do we take care of ourselves in the realities of present day life. For instance, if you are the breadwinner 5 months ago, today COVID has come and you no longer have money. Are you still the breadwinner? So how do you cope with that? And those are some of the challenges that men need to come out and talk about. And please note that it's not only in, you know, the work that is happening is not only working towards empowering women or ending violence against women and children. We also have other initiatives that men have started or that are global in nature where men can join in. You have the He for She campaigns. We have campaigns that are targeting to bring men on board. And so there are so many, including the ones that we are working with at Femnet. That is one area where you can come in and join and learn and become progressive in life. Yeah,
thank you very much. There are so many opportunities, like you've put it, and if you want to engage and join the movements, I'm sure Ken will be leaving us with details of how you can get in touch with him, and you can also just inbox in our GVRC social media handles. If you are willing to participate, you have trainings that you can train men to understand violence and the role that they can play. Yeah. So the opportunities are also there for men. As you are talking about issue of COVID and being the provider and not being able to do that right now. So I wanted just to ask one question as we near towards closing: is does money define the position of a man in the house, especially now in COVID? Umemtoroka landlord mpaka sasa umeshangaa utapitia wapi? Kuna vitu unafaa ufanye. Does it define the position of a man right now?
That's the paradox, because when we are growing up, we are told that we are the providers. We are the, you know, we provide shelter and so on and so forth. We are not prepared that these things can fail.
Yes.
So much so that by the time you are growing up and starting a family, then you take the onus of, you know, being the provider and so on and so forth. Even when in a situation where your wife is capable of providing bread. The problem is now, it's now like an upfront to your masculinity. Yes. So if you believe in the negative masculinity, you'll begin to ask yourself, no, mwanamke hawezi nilipia nyumba. Yet this is your wife, and you are supposed to be partners, and you are supposed to bring up a family together. What is it that makes it hard for you to even negotiate about, you know, your economic well-being? The challenge has always been that men tend to hide their, you know, their income, their capacity, and so if your wife doesn't know that, you know, you no longer get, you are no longer, you don't have money anymore because of COVID, and she's able to pay rent, what is the problem in you discussing that with her, or coming into a consensus and agreeing that, you know, let's move this way, and that can only happen if you have a mutual kind of satisfying relationship. Ukiwa ni mtu wa kupigana, mtaongea aje saa hizo, mtaongea saa ngapi? So mwanaume smart ni yule anaweza hata negotiate kama ako down.
Kwa hivyo mwanaume smart ni kujinegotiate and make sure the discussion is open. Na mwanaume smart pia anatambua that there's nothing wrong with a lady supporting.
No, there's nothing wrong with a lady supporting. In fact, the idea is, even for us, is preparing a man to marry a soldier, so that they are sure that, you know, I'm not going to be violent. You know, in many situations you find that mimi kuoa karao. Mimi siwezi. And for only simple reason, kwa sababu wanataka mtu atachapa. This one is trained to beat people. So what happens if you come, if love takes you that direction, will you survive? Na hiyo mwanaume. So mwanaume smart ni yule hata anaweza wa karao, anaweza wa soja, na waishi bila vita. Hakuna kitu ya kuogopa.
And also for ladies, I don't think it is wrong to support your man when he's down.
It's not wrong.
Yeah, half of these problems can be solved if you sit down and you talk.
It's not wrong at all.
Thank you. Asante. And as we come up towards the end of maybe now closing, for men probably who are out there and they are suffering, there are ways that they can reach us. You've said you leave them how they can get in touch, and they can also just get in touch through our GVRC Facebook page, Instagram, and we'll also give you a hotline number if you are going through some of these things. Now, before the last question, there are people who are still breaking the law. We've spoken about mwanaume smart, na kuna ule mwanaume ata decide hataki kuwa smart. Hizi cases zinaendelea. Like we were mentioning numbers about girls who are pregnant, and the focus has been who's responsible for these pregnancies. You get that in all this that we are talking, and we have so many laws in Kenya. Do you think, even from your own experience, when you're talking about issues of violence against women and girls, do you think the law is enough, and is it making a difference?
So far, I think we've made a lot of good strides in terms of coming up with laws and policies towards ensuring that we have safeguards on issues around teenage pregnancies. But ultimately, this is a community issue, and you find that a policeman will not come into your house to check if you are if you are getting into, what do we call it, incest. A policeman will not come and board a border with a girl so that he ensures that the girl is safe. So it takes the community to be, to believe in the existing laws, and also to see to it that the laws are beneficial to the communities. So anytime you disempower any member of your community, in this case we are talking about girls who are being impregnated, when are you going to have a member of parliament who is a lady from your own clan or your family? It will take you a little longer. I know of communities where you cannot show, like the women have been made invisible because of these behaviors. And for the next 10, 20 years, this is when they are beginning to realize that we needed to have empowered our daughters to even vie for a seat of a county women rep. So it takes a lot of effort by the community. But that doesn't mean that if you have a case, please report. And if report, we will take action. Yeah. Anybody who is violating a girl in this COVID period, the decree that the president made the other day, that you will be in for a road show.
Yeah, true. Yeah, thank you. So I think, we will make sure that we also lobby for implementation of these laws. There is laws out there, even in terms of what we are doing and what's happening. I think we'll hold them accountable. Yeah, it's accountability. Every man lazima achukue responsibility.
Yeah, and actually we want to ensure that we set you as an example. You violate and then let's get the report. You will be serving, when you go to court, it's usually said, uwe funzo kwako na wenye tabia kama na nia kama hii. You will be an example in your community, and nobody else will do it again because of the treatment you will get.
Thank you very much. I think umesema atabeba msalaba wake. Ataharibia wanaume wote.
Ataharibia wanaume wote. Ati sisi sasa ni wanaume wote na mwingine ni defiler hapa. Ati sisi tukitokea hapa kwa street, ati angalieni wanaume na yeye ni rapist. Hapa. Kila mtu atajibebea hiyo. Akae kiume hiyo. Sisi tuko tofauti. Sisi tuko tofauti. Yeah.
Kuna lazima tutachora hiyo line pale. Yeah, thank you very much. I think maybe for the viewers, before waambie venye wanaweza kufikia how they can reach you, because I know our time is up. For the viewers who are watching, how they can reach you, and also maybe explain a bit the work we are doing together with you and women in terms of ensuring that even men, we are playing a part in prevention of violence against women and girls.
Very well. We are available. That is one thing that I want to say to all the men who are in need of our services and attention. And one of the things that I can tell you is that come to us not when you violated a woman. Come to us when you really want to get to be advised, because if you violate a woman, definitely the law will take its course.
Yeah,
sure. And so if you want to reach me or reach us, my number is 0790600001. But there's also the national GBV hotline, which is 1195. This is a toll-free number which you can call from any point within the country. But we've also been working very well with the Gender Violence Recovery Center, Chege in particular, and the rest of the team, in a partnership with the United Nations Entity for Women, also known as UN Women, in Kericho, Bomet, and there's also the larger H6 counties. H6 counties are the counties where cases of maternal mortality are high in Kenya. And we are working towards ending violence against women during this corona period. But it doesn't mean that when we are talking about ending violence against women, men are not party to all the efforts. That's why we are here, and that's why we are here for the men and the women in the communities where we work. So anytime, any day, call us in your churches, call us in your forums, let's talk.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Be Mwanaume smart.
Mwanaume smart. Yeah, thank you very much. And also for us, if in case of any emergency, you can reach us through our hotline, toll free, 0800 720 565. I'll take that again. GVRC toll free hotline number 0800 720 565. I hope director wetu ataziweka zinapita hapa, lakini hiyo ikubali M-Pesa ni a response peke yake ya emergency. You can always talk to us anytime and we'll be sure to get back to you. And I think Ken, any parting shot, closing words? Hiyo time imekimbia, unaweza waachia ka quote ama anything?
Well, for me, I think there's no day when working towards equal societies has meant that one section of the society is left behind or is being discriminated. So anybody who thinks that women's empowerment is a disempowerment of men is not thinking right. So if you want to get to know more about how we can engage, and actually the idea that we are working with is, to change our thinking so that we can fit in the realities of present day world, which is more towards, human rights, values, and equality, then join us. We are ready to work with you so that you are Mwanaume smart.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and on my closing part is just to remind you that hold your part of the bargain, hold your end. The ile part of the bargain is that we all remain responsible to our actions. Ensure that you think through what you do, even if times are tough with COVID. Mwanaume smart ni yule anajitokeza na kuhakikisha kwamba he does not lose the protecting part of the people closest to him. Be that man. Kuwa ule mwanaume smart. Kuwa ule mwanaume smart kabisa. And as I remind you that everyone will be held accountable for their actions. And I think also a big thank you to UN Women for powering this session. And we'll be sure to engage in many other sessions. If there is something you'd like us to talk about, issues of men, kawaida, hapo tu kwa link, comment hapo, toa suggestions, toa topics, uliza swali, and we will get back to you. If you want to invite us somewhere, we have an idea of what you can discuss, the floor is open. It's not for me and Ken. It's for all of us. It's for all of us out there. And just to remind you, like, hapo penye unawatch, kuna kitu ya like hapo ya GVRC. Like your page, follow your page, uliza maswali alafu takutana. So thank you very much. Keep safe. Remember, corona is real. Ensure hizo vitu mmeambiwa sitarudia. Jaribu to do your part. Do your part so that we can continue linking up and engaging. Thank you much, and may God bless you.